My name is Jason, and this is Just Watches. Okay, today we return to the Casio Edifice line with one of their newer releases. This is the EFB108D 1AV. Now this reminds me a lot of the Casio EFR-S108D, except they dropped the screws, increased the size slightly, and also changed the bracelet. Now I'll pop a review to that EFR-S108D in the upper right hand corner now if you want to check it out to see how they compare. But before we get to the review of this particular watch, if you're enjoying the contents of this channel, I invite you to subscribe, and if you're enjoying the contents of this individual video, please give it a thumbs up. Thank you so much. So price and availability. This watch is currently available from a number of retailers, including eBay. The MSRP is $139. However, you can currently pick this up for around $105. So the case is 42 millimeters in diameter, 47.5 millimeters lug to lug. However, the end links do extend past the case, so the true lug to lug is 52 millimeters. It's incredibly thin at 8.5 millimeters. However, it does have an irregular lug width, so we're going to talk about that more when we get to the bracelet. Now, the case is extremely angular. We have crown guards on the right side and then a protrusion on the left side that sort of balances out the case shape. The finish is really good for this price point, and we have a combination of brushed and high polished surfaces. One detail I love about this watch is there's sort of a large angular facet along the side of the case that extends all the way to the ends of the lugs and gives them this really cool angular look. And then the thinness makes this watch incredibly comfortable on the wrist. Finally, they dropped the screws in the top of the case, which I know is sort of a point of contention on some of the other models, including the EFR-S108D. They did a really good job on the styling of this bracelet. I feel like it's very cohesive with the head of the watch. Now the bracelet starts at around 23 millimeters before tapering down to 20 millimeters at the clasp. The articulation of the bracelet against the back of the watch is very good, and the articulation between the links is decent. Both of these factors play into how comfortable a bracelet will wear. Now the links are mostly brushed with a small high polish facet in the center. This bracelet really catches light well, and the finishing is very consistent with the finishing on the case. The double push to point clasp is signed with Edifice and the Edifice logo. The scissor is just stamped metal, but the bracelet is serviceable. There are 4 micro positions, so you should be able to get a good fit, and then sizing is accomplished with standard split pins. Overall, this bracelet is decent. If you're familiar with Casio Edifice bracelets, you know that they get the job done, but they're not going to win any awards. Unfortunately, Casio elected to use a very small lug width when they designed this bracelet, and because of that, it will not be easy to switch out this bracelet for a strap, if at all. So make sure you're okay with this bracelet if you decide to pick up this watch. The screw-in caseback helps provide 100 meters of water resistance and has lots of data about the watch etched into it, including something we don't always get on Casio Edifice models, sapphire crystal. Now this watch is powered by the Casio Module 5664. This is a quartz movement with a battery life of approximately 3 years and a stated accuracy of plus or minus 20 seconds per month. It also features a quick set date. The 5mm push-pull crown is knurled and signed with the Edifice logo. It is a bit on the small side, but because it doesn't screw down, it's still pretty easy to operate the watch with. Now, why they didn't give us a screw-down crown is a big question. It really seems like with the Casio Edifice line at this price point, you either get a sapphire crystal or a screw-down crown, but never both, which is kind of a bummer. As mentioned before, the crystal here is sapphire, which is great to see on a Casio Edifice watch. It's completely flat, helping preserve the extreme thinness of the watch overall, although it does have a very small facet around the edge that will catch a little bit of light. Now, I don't think that they used AR coating, but I wouldn't really expect that from Casio at this price point. Now this watch does have a chapter ring and uses large white squares for the hour positions with dashes for the minutes, which are even further subdivided into smaller dashes. One thing I miss here that was present on the S108D, which is a very similar watch, is that the chapter ring had cutaways where the hour indices kind of sat in the chapter ring. It looked really cool. Speaking of the indices, they went with a slightly different style on those as well. They're still applied, but they are brushed on the top with a high polish facet towards the center. The 12 o'clock position also has a slightly thicker index with a stripe of high polish down the center. Now these indices play really nice with the light and pop against the black dial, but they gave up putting any lume on them. Now in most lights the dial looks matte black, but there is a very subtle wood grain texture which can be seen in some lighting conditions. The date window at the 3 o'clock position is framed with white and retains the index for the hour. I think a black date wheel would have been better here, but they used white on this particular model. Now the triple branding of the Edifice logo, Edifice, and Casio remains at 12, something I think they could do away with, just put one of the 3, and then we have sapphire and 100 meters at 6. Now the sword style hour and minute hands both have long counterbalances, are gabled, high polish, and filled with lume. The minute hand is on the shorter side, not quite reaching to the chapter ring, and the second hand is also quite short on this one, although the registration is good, and I do love that they went with red here to add a splash of color to the watch. I've always been impressed with the hands on the Casio Edifice watches I have reviewed. The gable down the center really helps them catch light nicely, and despite being slightly shorter on this particular version, the watch is extremely legible overall. Now, unfortunately, Casio took a huge shortcut with the lume on this model and only lumed the hands. This is lazy and pointless, as without a point of reference, it's really difficult to tell the time in the dark. The lume is also quite weak and doesn't last a very long time. And here is the watch on my 6 3/4 inch wrist. I think it's slightly big for my wrist just because of the way that those end links pop out, but then you can see from the side it's incredibly thin and it wears comfortable and close to the wrist. So pros and cons, starting with the pros. Well, the Casio Edifice line will really make you question the overall hobby of watches altogether. The case finishing, the indices, the hands are really, I think, out of this world for the price. And when you get one with sapphire crystal, you're getting a ton of watch for the money. I like that they dropped the screws on this version, and I think this is one of my favorite case shapes so far. I just wish they made it in 39mm. I also think they improved the bracelet on this one, and it looks way more cohesive with the head of the watch. Finally, I love how thin they can make these watches, and it makes it very sleek and comfortable on the wrist. As for cons, I think the lume is unforgivable. They shouldn't bother to lume the watch at all if this is how they're going to do it. Second, I wish they could design a way to have these integrated style bracelets, but still give a common lug width, such as 20 or 22mm. But since you can't really switch out the bracelet, it kind of holds the watch back for me a bit. I don't really mind the Casio Edifice bracelets, but I like the option to be there. Finally, I wish Casio would just use a screw down crown here. I'm not too much of a stickler for them, but I know people love their screw down crowns, and I think that would make this overall a great package. As for comparables, you can consider the EFR S108D, which is very similar to this watch, but at a 40mm size. They used to be hard to find, but you can actually find them on Amazon and Creation Watches these days. And then if you don't mind the loss of the sapphire crystal, you can go with my personal favorite, the Casio Edifice EFB108D, which we will probably give this watch a shot at next week or maybe the following week with a Casio Edifice showdown, but you'll have to wait and see. So there you have it, another Casio Edifice, the EFB108D 1AV. Now, what do you think about this watch? Let me know in the comment section below. As always, if you're enjoying the contents of this channel, I invite you to subscribe. And if you're enjoying the contents of this individual video, please give it a thumbs up. Thank you so much. That's all for this time. My name is Jason, and you have been watching Just Watches.